Okay, I think we can start, Nancy.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year. I'm Nancy Waxstein. I was hired several months ago by the New York Community Trust to help them rethink really their approach to their social work grant making. In doing so, Irfan Hassan and I were assisted by an advisory group of 5 people who included both academics, social work academics, and practitioners. And the RFP that you've seen is a result of that work and that process. And I would say also that I spent several months interviewing key informants, if you will, in the field, all of whom were social workers who were either working in as practitioners or academics, and in a couple cases in government as well. So so I am a consultant, and I'm going to remain involved with this process in reviewing the proposals that come in all of our categories. And I would just say I am a social worker, and I've worked in municipal government. I've worked in the settlement house world in New York for many years. And then recently, before I retired, at the Fordham Graduate School of Social Service here in New York. So I am very familiar with different fields of practice and different settings for doing that work. And it's been a real privilege to meet many people in the field who are doing amazing work. And I'm sure that includes many of you. So Irfan, and I think you all know that 2 of the 3 categories in the RFP are focused on the New York City metropolitan area, which, as defined by the New York Community Trust, is the 5 boroughs of the city plus Westchester, Suffolk, Nassau counties. And so that is obviously the focus the New York Community Trust has. But then there is a 3rd category that would embrace innovative work from nationally. The proposals, as I'm sure you've read, are due to the trust on February 14th, which is our way of expressing love to you on Valentine's Day. And the people at the trust who will be involved in reviewing proposals are Irfan Hassan, who is the Deputy Program Director at the Trust. And we are assisted by Melanie DiLorenzo, who is here as well. Before I turn it over to Irfan, I just do want to say that this is being recorded. This session is being recorded, and it will be posted on the New York Community Trust website in case you have colleagues who want to catch up with what we discussed today. So Irfan.
Hey, thank you, Nancy, and welcome everyone. And good to see a lot of familiar faces and good to see a lot of new faces. I'm glad the RFP has generated some interest. As Nancy mentioned, I'm Irfan Hassan. I'm with the New York Community Trust. And I want to just start by actually thanking, I know I've emailed several of you over the past few weeks, sorry, not weeks, past couple of days, saying you had 3 or 4 people signed up from your organization. Could we whittle it down to 1 or 2 because we were oversubscribed? And I very much appreciate those of you who had colleagues who then didn't join so we could get as many people on as we could. So thank you very much for that. I am going to share my screen, which will have the RFP on it, although Melanie has also put the RFP in the link, so you should be able to see it that way as well. But what I'll do is I'll just walk through it. I think we tried to make it as easy to read and as easy to understand as possible, but we realized there are probably things that we just took for granted that you might have questions on still. So let me start with the screen share, and I think there we are. Yep. And I think folks can probably see it. And I'll just walk us through it, and then really this session is for questions and answers about the RFP or things that are not clear in it that would be helpful for us to understand. I want to remind folks that it will be reviewed both internally by folks at the Trust as well as by our advisory committee. And for those of you who know the Trust and have worked with the Trust before, the advisory committees and staff make the recommendations. Our board makes a final decision on a grant. So ultimately, the grants that are approved are all grants that have also been reviewed and endorsed by our board.
And then, Irfan, let me just add that in case I'm sure you all looked at this, but the start, assuming that the board approves the recommendations we make, the start date for the work is July 1st, 2022.
Yes, our board will meet in June, early June, to make a decision, and then it takes a couple of weeks to get you award letters and so on and so forth. So the opening part of the RFP is really just some of the background that Nancy shared, and just the feeling that the Trust has a real commitment to social work. And I think we are at a point in time, certainly in this country, in this city, in this state, where the role of social workers has been called upon to help with certainly the COVID pandemic, but all sorts of other issues and inequities in society. And we really see this opportunity to uplift the profession that way. There are 3 grant-making strategies in 3 areas. Conceivably, you could apply for all 3 if you are a New York institution. Well, probably 2 of the 3. I don't know if you could make all 3, because it would be tough to be both an academic center as well as a nonprofit, community nonprofit. So you could apply for across the different ones. I doubt that our board and the advisory committee would select the same organization in more than one category, but just technically one can do that. The first category, which is really focused on community agencies and their collaborations with academic institutions, is around figuring out how can social workers start to address an issue that is of critical need to the community. It can certainly be a direct service issue, and you can provide that as a focus, or it can be more of a policy-related issue as well. 2 important things: it should be a new effort. It shouldn't be ongoing work that you are doing in the field of social work. And second, it should be an effort which very much involves community members. Our interest, and the committee in particular, felt that for social work practice to really do well, one needs to have the community involved. You will note that the first area does not talk about a particular population, a particular focus area or issue. Population, I mean kids, older adults, immigrants, focus area, health, education, food systems, whatever. We have left that very open, because we want the field to tell us where you think social workers can be deployed and how they can be deployed, etc. It is an opportunity for a community organization to collaborate with an academic institution. We do require that the academic institution be a CSWE accredited program, and the type of partnership you develop is really up to you. We encourage that this sort of application would have an internship opportunity for master's level students. We we debated a fair amount whether it should also be extended to bachelor's levels, but given the focus on really being a program that would leverage change, the committee settled on a master's level. And most importantly, that it also has potential for expansion. That's sort of the first area. I realize in my introduction, I forgot to say, when we get to the questions, please kind of raise your hand virtually. I think with the almost 80 people on the call, I can't see everybody on my screen. It's a pretty big screen. So when we get to that point, do kind of raise your hand virtually. I think you can do that by going to the symbol sign and raising your hand. Second category, which is looking at expanding the pipeline of students of color and students from low income backgrounds into academic social work programs. Again, this was an issue that unanimously the advisory committee felt was critical. Here, the applicant organization must be a CSWE accredited nonprofit university, school, or department of social work. We are not looking at supporting any for-profit schools of social work. I don't know actually if they exist. I think there may be a few, but you do have to be a nonprofit. We are looking at efforts that will partner with other organizations. It is strongly encouraged. You don't need to, but given the focus on community and the fact that that we would like to make sure that what is taught in the classroom has relevance on the community front, we think partnership makes sense as well. For this category, we do require that the applicant institution, which is an academic entity, does provide a match equaling 15% or more. The match can be provided in kind. It can be, we just need to have it verified that it actually will be part of the project and part of the project budget. And for this category, as it is in category 1, the applicant institution must be based in New York City, Nassau County, Suffolk County, or Westchester. And we did indicate that a scholarship-only program, while one can apply for it, is probably going to be low on the priority list to be considered. So.
Right, and that's scholarship only. I mean, scholarship support could be part of an overall strategy, but not the sole.
Exactly. It's a scholarship only, where it's just, we'd like to, use the money to add in 5 more fellowships, and this is it, and these are the fellowships. There needs to be some programming around it. And the awards here are for up to $200,000, up to $100,000 a year. I do want you to pay attention to the fact that it does say up to, depending on what we get in, what the advisory committee recommends and what the board approves. We may need to jiggle the amounts a bit, but if we get to that stage, we certainly will be in touch with the applicant. But it is an up to. We're hoping we can get to that full amount, but up to. And then the last category, which is really looking at the profession of social work at large, and really what its role is vis-a-vis policy, advocacy, and research, is open to organizations from around the country. It can be any nonprofit across the country. You can be an advocacy organization, you can be a practice organization, you can be anything. You need to be a nonprofit. We encourage institutions that are particularly focused on serving people of color and that are made up of people of color. We encourage institutions that think about policy and systemic issues involving social workers in response to a particular issue, or at the policy level or on the advocacy level. If you are going to include surveys or assessments of the field, we ask that you also include how those things will be disseminated to the community writ large, not just sort of the work shouldn't just, the grant shouldn't just be supporting just that activity, but also what will happen with it. And individual academic research projects are not going to be considered. So, you know, if you are a academic at a Department of Social Work and you want to do research on just a particular issue for your own research purposes, that is unlikely to be something that would be considered by the committee. Let me stop there and just check if there were any clarifying questions just broadly on these three categories before I get into just a little bit about the submission bit. While we are pretty broad and open as to what you can apply for, how you submit is quite specific, and I do want to spend some time on that. But just checking if there are any questions. Okay, I see John, Bet, you raised your hand. What's your question? Go ahead.
And can we ask you to identify yourselves as you ask your question?
Right, and the institution you're with, and I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
Sure, thanks so much for hosting this. My name's John Betts, I'm with Breaking Ground. The question I had, I guess, was around sort of what you're considering new for the purposes of category 1. Is that meaning that this grant would be the first time that that initiative or project is funded, or could new be a new expansion of a pilot program that we're looking to expand?
So ideally, it would be the first where it is new. Funders always like things that are brand new and shiny, but we recognize it's not a lot of money, and it is not a lot of money for a long time. So I think a very clearly defined new component within an effort that you are looking at would be acceptable. You'd need to kind of speak to why this is different than what you were doing before, or why this is an add-on and why it's needed. So.
Yeah, so for example, if you have a particular methodology, if you're going to expand it to serve a new community or a new population, that could be considered, I think, new.
Thank you.
Amy, you have a question, or John, do you still have a question, or no? Okay, great. Okay, Amy.
Thank you. My question is.
Who are you, Amy? Amy,
I'm so sorry. Yeah, Amy Jolin. I'm with Lutheran Social Services of New York. My question is about what we can spend the funding on. I know you said you don't want to spend this on scholarships, but can the funding be used to pay the stipend the social workers during their training period?
This is for category 2 that you're talking about?
No, I'm sorry, it's category 1. So it would be a relationship between LSSNY and our institution, that a school of social work that we partner with for existing programs and expansion into a new population, and just concerned about whether there are any restrictions on how that funding gets spent, and whether it can be a stipending, funding that goes to the social worker for the period of time that they're, interning with us.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. No reason that it can't. Yeah.
Thank you.
Marciana.
Yes, hello. Good to see you, Nancy. I'm Marciana Popescu. I'm with Fordham University, and I have 2 questions, but they are somewhat similar. So for the first one, for category 1, is one organization the one we need to work with, or can we partner with multiple organizations? And for category 3, would that be amenable to partnerships with community-based organizations, like applications, joint applications, with an academic institution and a community partner?
So let me answer the second question first. Yes, absolutely. If you can partner with somebody on the 3rd category, that's great. There's not a lot of money to go around for the partnership, so that is why we didn't include it as encouraged. for the first question, for your first question, yes, you can have multiple organizations. I guess I just want to clarify, do you mean that it is a single proposal with multiple community organizations, or you as an academic institution are part of multiple community organization proposals?
No, I meant like as a single proposal with multiple partners, particularly because the way I read the category 1 description, you have to have one of the not-for-profit being the main applicant. So my question is, okay, let's say we have one not-for-profit, the main applicant, could we have an edit organization that will partner with us as a co-PI?
Yeah,
Yes,
totally.
yes.
Totally. In fact, you know, I think that would be very positive.
And just in terms of the other thing, because I think there are more community organizations and fewer schools of social work or departments of social work. So it is likely that there will be a fair amount of frenzy of community organizations contacting schools of social work to be partners. You know, obviously it is up to the school and your own policies as to how many places you can sign on to be part of the grant. If it ends up being that there is a school that is in multiple funded applications, we will want to know how will we be replicating you, Marciana, to be part of 5 proposals at the same time. So just think of that as you sort of think about that work.
Thank you. I'm replicating myself on a daily basis, but that's a different story.
Tara?
Hi, I'm Tara Gardner from the Daycare Council of New York. I had a question related to community and how it's being defined. Is it a geographic community or a sector community, like early childhood providers or teachers?
That is a really great question. I think, Irfan, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. I think it could be either of those. Certainly geographic is something that we thought a lot about, but if you're defining your community as early childhood, the universe of early childhood providers, which I know is what your association is about, I don't see why that wouldn't be acceptable.
We left it broad. You know, it could be geographic. It could be like you described, early childhood. It could be a particular population as a community. You know, certain. I'm just going to say the LGBTQ community. You know, a population that way. So it is pretty broad. Now. On the geographic front, I think we would hope it would not be talking about just a single building with, you know, a few people in there for, you know, that are part of some social service program. It sort of would be broader than just a handful of people geographically. So it really is neighborhood or, you know, sub-neighborhood, if you wish. Louise Barry.
Hi, my name is Louise Barry. I'm with Sadie Nash Leadership Project. My question is whether you are at all interested in proposals that take any kind of sort of new or maybe more innovative experimental approach to social work, or if you are sort of looking for tried and true tested methods.
Absolutely the first. If you see the title of the RFP includes the word innovation. So we are looking for all kinds of approaches, tested, untested, but you would have to, of course, say why you think it'll work.
I would just add, we might have put in, you know, innovative in parentheses legal approaches to social work. So just, you know, kind of, it can be new, it can be innovative, but there needs to be some evidence that it does fit within the realm of social work. And other questions, or should I go on to just the process? Great. And we have lots of time. So, Louise, did you raise your hand again? No. Okay.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay, yeah. The Zoom screen trying to figure out which one, there's a little bit of a time delay here. Okay, so those are the 3 categories. I think to reiterate the key points, the first one does have to be a community organization as the applicant. The second one has to be a CSWE recognized academic institution, and those two need to be in the metropolitan New York area. And the third one, anybody in the US that is looking to advance social work practice policy. How do you submit? The proposal cover sheet is something that you will need to complete. Those of you familiar with the trust and having applied previously, it is the same proposal cover sheet. However, it will be titled with the Investing in Social Work's Future caption. It requires, if you haven't already gone and taken a look at it, it requires information about the applicant organization. It requires some demographic information about who is on your board, who is on your staff, kind of contact information, etc. The trust does allow for a entity to apply, and this is probably more so for academic institutions where there is a related nonprofit that often receives money on behalf of the institution. So Fordham School of Social Work Foundation, Hunter College Foundation, those sort of entities. We allow for that where the applicant is the school, but the entity that will receive the money on behalf of the applicant, the funds administrator. And there is a little checkbox there that if that is your situation, you should check it, and the funds administrator detail in terms of who they are, what the EIN number is, etc., will need to be put in. We do require, sorry, did I miss something, Nancy?
No. I just want to say, Irfan, did you want to discuss if the applicant is the social work department or the school within a larger university, do you want to talk about that, or does that come later?
Sure. And no, now is a good time. It certainly can be the applicant. The applicant can be a department. It is rare that departments will have their own sort of EIN or tax ID number, so it will still be the school's ID number that will be put in sort of for purposes of sort of for the record, but it will be, the grant will be to the Department of Social Work at XYZ school. I think most academic institutions do have their own policies on who can apply and how they're kind of listed, but we're open to kind of the lead entity being a department, a school, or the academic institution writ large. And similarly, the in-kind contribution component for the second category, it can come from the institution writ large, it can come from a school, or it can come from the department. It just needs to be a credible and verifiable in kind. We do require a letter of whoever is applying, essentially saying that they are committed to the project. And then a very brief executive summary of, what you're looking to do, well, which category you're looking to apply in, first of all, and then what you're looking to do. And then the proposal itself, as you can see, is we are not NIH. It's between 10 to 15 pages. That doesn't include any attachments that you might have, or budget related things, or anything else that you might want to attach. And it basically is, who are you? What is the issue you are trying to address? How are you going to address it? How will you disseminate what you find? How will you share? What will be the outcomes of it? And how are you going to look to sustain this effort after the funding ends? Because these are 2-year grants at this point. The board will make a decision. And the board will make a decision to figure out how they would move forward, whether they would look to perhaps renew some of the efforts, whether they would look to issue another RFP to look at other areas. Because it is so broad in terms of what we might do, we felt that we didn't want to say that, and then, we'll look to get renewals, et cetera, because who knows where things will be 2 years from now. So that last bit is important. if you are in a partnership, and most of the categories, certainly 1 and 2, do require some level of partnership, please do include a letter of support of partnership and make it specific as to who would be doing what. The advisory committee does want to see sort of roles as to how strong the partnerships are. One can get a letter of support often, but we really want it more than we are supportive of this program. We are supportive of this program and will be supportive in this manner. And then an itemized budget. You should include any in-kind time, any other sources of support that might be covering the project. We don't need to be the only funder for this effort. If there are other organizations, other foundations, other sources of support, government money that might also be contributing towards the effort, please do put that in. An operating budget for the organization. If you are a department or a school of social work that is the applicant, it can be the budget for the department or the school. Obviously, if it is a university, they usually have a boilerplate operating budget. And then either the audited financial statements or a IRS Form 990, the most recent one. The preference would be for fiscal year 2021, but 2021 will suffice. And a list of the board of directors of the organization. So that's sort of the information that we would need in terms of the proposal itself. And then the submission directions, I won't go into them in a great amount of detail, because when you're actually doing the submission, my guess is you'll refer to it, but you should be able to maneuver through the proposal cover sheet pretty easily, even if you have a funds administrator that is going to be receiving the money for you. Just make sure that you do check that box there. The bolded bit is, I think, where your sponsored program folks often shake their heads in dismay around overhead. But our board and the committee did feel very strongly that for academic centers, academic institutions, and the ones where then there is a funds administrator that is also applying on or is receiving the money on their behalf, the overhead costs shouldn't exceed 5% of the total project budget. Administrative costs, and this is important, relating to carrying out the proposed activities of the project, space, supplies, etc., obviously prorated to the amount of time the project is going to be involved in there or in that space. They are not subject to the 5% limit. This is really for the administration of the grant. That's the 5%. The other stuff can be included under the other than personnel OTPS component in your project budget. And then sort of point 3, I think, is just a helpful hint that you may want to do all of this, making sure that you have all the items together and in a single PDF before you start the upload bit and before you start finalizing the proposal cover sheet. And you will get automated information from the no reply email address saying that we've received your proposal, and that is also the address that if the proposal is not going to move forward after review, that you will get a decline from. So please make sure that you do add that to your address book so that you can receive information from there. If the proposal is one that is likely to move forward and will be presented to our board, either Nancy or I will be in contact with you, and we probably will require some clarification, some additional information, etc. The information sessions, we are on the second information session. We will have the recording of this session up on our website. I think we are going to be able to go back and change this form on our website to be able to basically give a link to the recording. So where the place where you're going to apply, you'll be able to go back and you can revisit the recording if you want. Important dates, 5 p.m. Monday, February 14th, please have your proposal uploaded. It should be submitted electronically via the portal. If you have been able to see this form online and you click on where to apply earlier on, you'll be able to get to the proposal cover sheet. Do not send in a hard copy to us. We are not doing hard copies anymore. We will make sure to get back to you with a decision by June the 17th, probably a little before then. I think our board meets about a week before, but definitely by June 17th, you will have an answer. And the grant period is from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2024. I'll stop there and see if there are other questions as well. And once again, if you can just raise your hand and raise your hand virtually, and we'll take questions.
And Irfan, I would add one thing, that if there are issues about the submission itself, Melanie DiLorenzo, who we introduced earlier, can answer some questions and probably help with some of the technological or logistical issues you may be having.
And I'm just looking at the chat. There are a few messages here. Somebody wanted my email address. It is on the RFP, but I will put it in the chat. And Melanie's as well. Jennifer, I see your hand is raised.
So, Jennifer Smith from Columbia University. And I just have a question about the board of directors, the list of board of directors that's required. And that's typically on behalf of the institution. But is it okay to submit the board from the School of Social Work in lieu of that?
I would submit, because ultimately the grant will, we try to attach, the reason why I'm thinking is because we usually try to attach the board to the EIN number that of the institution applying. And the EIN number is usually what's on your 990, and your 990 usually lists the board of Columbia University, not necessarily the School of Social Work, because I doubt the School of Social Work necessarily has its own tax ID. It's part of Columbia broadly. I guess what I'd say is you could attach both. It's a sheet of paper that needs to be made a PDF and added in. So put in, the list of the Columbia board and put in the list of the Social Work School board.
That'd be our board of trustees, our board of trustees for the university, and then the board of directors for the social.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we mean by the board. It's the governing board of the institution, ultimately.
All right, thank you.
I see a couple of other hands up, but I also saw something in the chat which other people might have that same question. And it's, if you are a grantee outside of the trust for other projects, are you disqualified from applying? And the answer is no. You can apply even if you have a current grant, if you have another grant pending with the trust. This RFP is sort of a standalone effort outside of our regular competitive grants. We do say, don't apply for 3 or 4 competitive grants at the same time, but this is a special RFP, so you can apply for that. Becky, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you. So our organization is interested in applying for the first category. We're a nonprofit, and we're interested in applying in partnership with a smaller community organization. And we were just wondering, how much collaboration does there need to be with the social work institution? Is it enough to apply in collaboration with a social work school and say, that we will take social work interns, X number of interns per year to participate in this particular program? Or does there need to be greater participation from the actual social work program? Did that question make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think our intent of this RFP is to really do that that bi-directional work between the academic institution, which trains social workers, and community organizations that deploy them. So, you know, if just placing a social work intern or student in for a practicum into the organization is the extent of the collaboration, certainly it's there, but I'm not sure that it would meet really the intent of really advancing the practice in a way that is meaningful to both the community and the School of Social Work.
Yeah, and let me add that with the intent, I think of our thinking here is that bringing communities into schools and schools into communities, and trying to make that real.
Okay, thanks.
Lauren?
Hi, good afternoon. Lauren Cahill with Smith College School of Social Work. I was wondering, are you willing to fund smaller grassroots organizations without 501(c) status, but that have fiscal sponsorship through an accredited nonprofit or university?
I think if they are not the lead applicant, probably I think it would be tough, quite honestly, to have them be the lead applicant. So I don't know if that helps, but if you're with a School of Social Work, and I'm guessing you're talking about category 3, given your location. I have to say I hadn't thought about that for category 3.
You know, it might be better if that small sort of unincorporated group could affiliate with, even if it's a fiscal sponsor relationship, if they could affiliate with a group that does have that status.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be. I can understand why it would be important for the group to be the recipient, even though they may not be formally organized with a 501(c)(3, because that does speak to the importance of looking at community. I think we would want some formal connection. So here's what I'd say: explain it. I mean, you can complete the proposal cover sheet with a funds administrator, which is a 501(c)(3 receiving the money on your behalf, and the applicant being whoever the applicant is, and explain it and why the rationale is that this is the way you really want it set up. The money obviously would not be able to go to an unincorporated group. You'd need to have somebody to receive it on your behalf.
Thank you so much.
Eric?
Yes, hi there. Thanks so much. I'm Eric Levine from the Touro College Graduate School of Social Work. Hi, everyone. Quick question, somewhat similar to one of the questions that was raised by one of the other schools before. It relates to the technical submission of budgetary information. You said that it would be possible for a school that is part of a larger institution to provide the budget just of its department, except that for most of us, I would assume that our 990s are geared towards the larger entity. So of course, the Graduate School of Social Work has its own budget, but it's part of a much larger university budget. So for the sake of consistency, would you rather see the total university's budget or the departmental budget, or both perhaps?
So the 990 and the audit, we understand, is always going to be of the larger entity, and that you should submit. If you have a school budget, you can attach that as sort of the operating budget for the school. That's fine. You don't necessarily need to attach the entire university one. You know, New York, some of the institutions here have budgets that are in the billions, and they kind of don't mean a lot in front of a $200,000 grant. So it would be a mix and match. The operating budget could be of the department. Obviously, the audited financials of the 990 would be of the entire institution.
Great, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
and Kui, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yes, that's correct. This is Queen Yun from Naya College School of Social Work. And we are thinking, we have about more than 80% of students are students of color. And we would like to create a center to reinforce the education that we are providing to these students. So would it be that kind of center, creating center would be belong to the category 2?
Kui, what school of social work are you with?
It's a Naya College. Naya College School of Social Work.
You know, I think the goal is really strengthening the pipeline, and I guess the question would be, you know, how does a center actually strengthen the pipeline? So I think that is the goal. You know, I mean, you know, so I think, you know, I'd rather not sort of say yes, we would consider it, no, we wouldn't, because it you know, that really is the work of the committee and the board to kind of make that decision. I think the guidelines are broad. If you can make a successful case that the center is advancing the pipeline, students of color and underrepresented students, and however you're defining center, you know, is it a geographic space? Is it a programmatic issue? Is it whatever? So
yeah, it's going to be kind of organizing and managing a relationship with the agencies and communities. So that's yeah, so that kind of component will be included in the center. Yeah.
So hopefully that helps answer it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I see Catherine, and then I see Shanti.
Thank you. My question actually, in a funny way, may follow on Kui's. So I am.
Can you remind me where you're from, Catherine?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm from the Center for Prolonged Grief at Columbia University School of Social Work, and we are working with a community agency that would be applying for this grant, but and to do some very innovative work that they want to do around grief. And my question actually relates to the fact that we also at Columbia University have a very active and a very active program to try to address your project 2, your area 2. And so if we were both, first of all, I guess from what you said before, we being Columbia University could be associated with 2 of these grants. Is that true?
True.
And could they also be linked in some way? That could they be linked and unlinked and also unlinkable in case one or the other were funded and the other wasn't? So you understand, am I making myself clear?
So you mean, you're saying, Catherine, to submit one proposal that covers 2 categories?
No, I'm saying submit two proposals that if they were possibly both funded would be able to be linked. Would that be of any use? And or I mean, I'm guessing we would link them if we could get that, because they are very linked actually, without getting into the details of that. There are reasons why they would be very synergistic. And could we make that argument?
I think you could make the argument. I think there is no telling whether one or none or both would be picked. I think the both pick is probably unlikely that any institution would get more than one grant across the 3 categories, just because it is a decent amount of money, but it is really not a lot of money. And it seems like there's a fairly robust interest in applying, just if one looks at just the number of people who've been RSVPing for the sessions. So, you know, I think each application should ultimately be a standalone application. You know, you can make reference to how it might link with other work, but it really should be just that application.
So then, just to be clear, then if we did submit 2 applications, we would be competing against each other, essentially.
Probably, unless they are the 2 that the committee feels really are the ones that both need to be funded.
Right.
I think our goal is also to have some reach, both in terms of grantees and scope in terms of different kinds of projects and areas of focus, etc. Now, I could be proven wrong, and the board could say, we're honing in on the Upper West Side and Northern Manhattan, and guess what? Columbia has 5 grants, but I don't think so.
Yeah, thank you.
Shanti.
Shanti.
I'm Shanti Matthew. I'm the Managing Director of the Public Policy Lab. Nice to see you. Thanks for hosting this. So we've been talking about this RFP with some partners at the New York City Department of Education, who of course employ many social workers in the context of public schools, specifically in the community school system. So we've been talking with partners there about the opportunity to engage and work to engage more social workers in sort of high need school contexts, and also to enhance their role and their voice. So I wanted to ask about that in relation to category 3 grant award opportunity and language there, because this work that we're thinking about is not necessarily about changing something specifically within the world of social work or the role of social work, but actually more changing how the public system really structurally incorporates social work expertise, role and voice, right? And so, it would be certainly about building social work capacity, like staff capacity, because we would design those new programmatic elements with current social workers and interns within the public school system, but wouldn't be necessarily, as you say here, like sort of identifying the area of social work practice that we're aiming to change. So I was curious about your reaction to that and whether you think that's appropriate and interesting within category 3.
Sorry, go ahead, Nancy.
No, I would say, Shanti, if you are thinking about a systemic look at how social workers interact with constituencies in the public schools, I would say that is a systemic policy.
Okay.
That sounds appropriate to me. I hope you don't disagree, Irfan.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it is really around, you would need to craft it that the social worker is the important entity in the equation. The community school is secondary.
Got it.
That's sort of how, it is about social workers. So
yes. Okay. That's super helpful. Great. Thank you very much for that feedback.
Lisa Johnson.
Hi, thank you first of all for hosting this. Appreciate the opportunity. My question is just more detail. Can you just re-clarify again what you meant by the indirect rate of 5%, what it does and doesn't cover, and what indirect rate you would have for something else? I'm sorry, I got confused by that.
Sure. So where are you from?
Oh, I'm sorry, Washington University in St. Louis.
Yeah, I see that beautiful academic building in the back, but
so for academic institutions and entities like Foundation for Washington University and so on, the indirect rate is really the rate that is really the cost of what it will take to manage the grant on behalf of the entity that is applying, because it's the Department of Social Work or the School of Social Work, and you've got a sponsored programs project or something like that that takes in the money. So it really, that's the 5%. It shouldn't cost more than 5% to make sure that you can get the grant, they can deliver on the reports, etc. All the other stuff relating to the project, so whether it is some space, whether it is equipment, all of that is sort of other than personnel costs, other than personnel services category, and should be listed separately.
As
that
part of the
isn't
budget.
direct.
That is not overhead. That is project costs.
That
Yeah,
is project.
personnel is not overhead, so that's not subject to 5%, right?
No.
Thank you. I got it.
No.
Thank you.
Other questions? Ken.
Yes, Irfan, good to see you again.
You too.
With regards to the trust review process, will interviews with some of the potential grant recipients be part of the process, or will the process strictly be you all taking a look at the applications?
My guess is that the ones that the board will consider before will require some clarification from the organization. Now, interview makes it sound a little more formal and structured. I think it will be more around, is this what you meant by this? Can you clarify this? Just sort of getting a better understanding of the proposal. So
okay,
and we would do it obviously by this effort isn't large enough, and certainly the times are not such that one can kind of think of long extended site visits to go through things and so on and so forth. It will likely be a Zoom call. Make sure the relevant folks are on it, and let's just get clarification on this is what we need to understand better.
Okay, and a second question with regards to the various categories. Is it possible for an organization to be the lead organization for one category and then be part of perhaps a subcontractor or some other type of arrangement on another category?
Yes, it is. And I would say depending on the project, and particularly in category 1, where one is looking at community involvement, one could also see organization A being the lead, organization B being a subcontractor because there is a connection to community, but organization B is also applying separately for another project where they are the lead for something else. So yes.
Okay.
Now it would need to be separate projects, so you can't really write yourself in to do the same thing in 2 different ways.
Right. And I know there's like 80 plus folks who are part of this particular call. Would it be possible for the trust to provide a list of the various institutions that have been part of this call and the previous call?
Oh.
You're talking, Ken, about the academic institutions or all of them?
I'm thinking all, Nancy, because we're still trying to figure out what we want to do and with whom we might partner.
So here's what I'd say, Ken. We didn't ask if people would be okay in getting their information shared. What I will do is when we send out the link to the video, we will follow up with it. We'll mention that, if you are you okay with sort of being on a list of named folks that attended the information session. I'm guessing you're asking it, in terms of figuring out, are they good partners to be found amongst the groups?
Right.
But I feel that I don't think I can just say yes, here's the list, because
you have to ask first.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Miriam?
Hi, my name is Miriam Gadlin, and I'm a grant writer at the Jewish Board for Family and Children's Services. And I'm just wondering if you could please clarify if the 5% maximum for overhead only applies to the larger institutions and higher education applicants that you were mentioning, or is this also applying for the social service organizations as well?
It applies to the academic institutions and the funds administrators.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, it applies to everybody. Yeah, right, you're fine.
No. The overhead for the grant administration, it applies to just the academic institutions. The overhead for nonprofits is a little more generous, although we are certainly nowhere near the federal rate.
And what is it then for the?
I mean, I think, it needs to be reasonable. We usually, our typical grants are between 8 to maybe 12, 15%. Some people would say that is pretty unreasonable, but that's sort of where we land with overhead. Does that help, Miriam?
Yes, thank you so much.
And I see there is a question in the chat. In terms of grant period, is it? Can the project end prior to the official time of its, or a little later then? I see. So the question basically is, well, what if the project is to extend beyond June 2024 for a couple of months, essentially through the summer? I think it's fine to do that. It's not like we're going to prorate up the money to do 2 more months of payment additional stuff. So the grant would need to cover it, that amount. Gary.
Yeah, hi. Gary Sutton at Canva. I just want to follow up on that last question about indirect, because in category 1, the nonprofit is the lead applicant, right?
Yes.
Right.
So we would be administering the grant.
Exactly.
So we would be subject to the 5%.
No, you are not. The 5% is really for academic institutions and, foundations associated with academic institutions that receive money on behalf of the academic institutions.
Okay.
That is the 5%, because that entity is really just serving as a pass-through for the academic institution. The check is being written out to, I'm just going to use Hunter College Foundation as an example for Hunter College. They are the ones that are that 5% overhead to administer the grant.
Okay.
For nonprofits, you're the ones who are applying, you're the ones who will get the money. You should submit it like you submit other budgets. We didn't put a figure on overhead, but as I mentioned, typically our overheads, range between that 8 to 12-ish, 15-ish%.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have one, actually. I'm Robert Taylor from Youth Action Youth Build in East Harlem, and just wanted to further follow up on Gary's last question. So the 5% restrictive overhead is on the academic institutions and their sort of indirect cost rates that they usually bill. But for the nonprofit, we can add in our own overhead rate in addition to that 5%. Is that correct?
You could. I mean, we do not give overhead at the same level as like the federal government. So, if it's an
we don't
overhead
have direct cost rate, but we usually do a de minimis of about 10%.
So yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Other questions? Want to be sure. Let me just scroll through that nobody's raising hand elsewhere. Right. Nancy, is there anything that we missed in that's critical?
I don't think so. I would just add, and maybe I should have said this at the beginning, that it's a really wonderful investment, I think. As somebody who's been in the field for a very long time, it's really nice to see the trust making this investment in social work practice and in the social work profession. And I don't think any of us think that everyone, I'm sure on this call, including all of us at the trust, think that it should be more, but I think by they're issuing this RFP based on combining 4 different funds, consolidating 4 different funds that they manage. And I think it's just really such a positive thing that they are looking to elevate the profession, because I think all of us on this call know that it's quite a necessary thing to do. So, as I said, for me, as somebody who has been toiling in the field for a long time, it is really a privilege. And we really are looking forward to seeing some very, very interesting proposals, because we tried to make it as wide open as we could, which I know makes some people uncomfortable, but give us your best shot, tell us your best idea. And I think that's the spirit in which we devised this RFP.
Jennifer, I see you have a question before we go.
Thank you. Again, from Jennifer from Columbia. Just really quick, I've been thinking about this 15% match in category 2. And just for illustration purposes, for example, if that's $200,000, that would be roughly $30,000. And it appears that there must be a confirmation letter with the application where you can definitively say, okay, we have this $30,000 commitment. So I'd like to know, what type of in-kind commitments are you most comfortable with?
Do you want to say another word about that, about why that was inserted, that provision?
That was actually my initial question, but I thought not to ask it because I said that's a moot point now. But that was my initial. I was going to ask you what's the rationale behind that. But...
So I'd say, since we're amongst friends here, the rationale, or one of the rationale, I think that the committee felt on this was that the institution, particularly an academic institution, should have some skin in the game on something like this. Now, I know departments, and it can get complicated because you can have a department of social work within a larger school of, human services, and, the department isn't on the forefront of the school. But this is sort of, it was really there to kind of get the entity that controls the money to recognize that, all right, we might be bringing in $200,000. We need you to pony up and show some love to us in the form of $30,000, and what it could be is, we, instead of asking for money for some of the release time of faculty to do the work, we're going to continue to cover that for faculty to do it. That's showing some commitment that they love social work as much as the people who are proposing the project. I don't know, Nancy, if you want to add anything to it, but that was sort of the intent and the idea behind why we felt very strongly with that bit, and the committee felt very strongly on that front.
Yeah, I think there was a recognition among some of our advisory committee members that in some cases, schools of social work in larger universities are somehow may be treated as stepchildren, may be treated as less important than some other more revenue producing schools. And that there was they wanted to see a commitment from the university itself to the School of Social Work or the Department of Social Work to say, no, we support our School of Social Work. I guess that's left everybody speechless, but okay.
Other questions?
And Jennifer, I'd say I'm a Columbia grad, so there you go.
Oh, okay, thank you for letting me know.
Other questions? Great. Well, if not, and I think, let me scroll through one more time, but I think, yeah. Thank you all for making the time, and thank you again for and thank your colleagues who had also signed up, who then I asked, well, can only one of you attend, for being okay in doing that. We were able to get many more people on than we had originally, many more organizations on, and that I think is important to us. So thank you for that. And we look forward to getting applications. If you run into any technical stuff while you're uploading, so on, Melanie is the person to email, although I think the form should be pretty self-explanatory. With that, we'll look forward to seeing some very interesting submissions over the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.